Early Human Food Simulation. In this game, students will play as elders, leading a group of people from hunting and gathering to farming. This game teaches about how as human beings became more productive at obtaining food, they were able to rapidly increase in number and specialize, allowing for the development of more technology, which in turn increased food productivity and population growth. Cooperative game for 2 to 4 players. Several groups can play at the same time, as long as each group has their own materials. If played with multiple groups, they can compete with each other to see who gets the most families. The game can actually be split into 2 sections that could be played over 2 class sessions or without each other. Best if used during a section on early humans. To play, each group needs a copy of the Hunter-Gatherer game board, a copy of the Hunter-Gatherer success board, a copy of the Village Farm game board, a copy of the Village Farm success board, a Hunter-Gatherer event deck, a Village Farm event deck. A note about materials. If you decide to do both parts, which is recommended, at some point you'll need to switch between the Hunter-Gatherer and Village Farm boards and decks. In order to avoid confusion, it is not recommended that you give everything out at once. One way to deal with the transition is to print the boards double-sided. The following materials will stay the same during both the Hunter-Gatherer and Village Farm sections. To play, each group needs counters to represent families. Each counter represents 1. The number of families can be quite high, so having counters that represent 5 families could be helpful. If an effect would ever remove a group's last family, ignore it and keep playing. To play, each group needs food counters, at least 10 of the one denomination counters, and 5 of that denomination, and more in reserve if needed. To play, each group needs piety counters. Students can gain piety counters by answering questions correctly or from drawing event cards. Stone Age people believed in the ability of spirits to influence events, and piety measures how friendly these spirits are. 2 piety counters can be spent to prevent the death of a single family. 3 piety counters can be spent to prevent the negative effects of a card during the Village Farm section. Each group should have at least 7 piety counters, with extra kept in reserve by the instructor. Something to roll a dice in, as there are a lot. At least 7 4-sided dice and 10 6-sided dice. You'll need extra to hand out to students when they have a lot of families. Reading a 4-sided dice can be difficult, as the number might be at the top or the bottom. The number that should be read is the one that is flat. In this case, the 1 and the 3 are at strange angles, so they are not the correct number. However, the 4 is flat and therefore is the correct number. Having dice trays, or plastic boxes also makes it easier to hand out materials. You could also consider allowing students to use a dice rolling program such as that found on Google.
On the hunting and gathering board, families go in the tribe section. Deceased families go in the burial ground section. Food goes in the pack section. Piety goes in the totem section. When starting a game, the more families you start with, the easier it is for students. 3 is a good number. Place 3 family counters in the tribe section of the board. Place 3 family counters in the tribe section of the board. Let's walk through a turn. First, ask students to answer a question with their groups. The groups are not in competition with each other. They choose the answer and then are given the correct one. If they get it right, they give themselves 1 piety counter. So here's an example of the question. So this would be read aloud to the students, and if they get it right, they add 1 piety. The answer will be in bold. And if they got it right, they would add 1 piety to the totem section. Draw a card from the top of the blank deck and follow the instructions. In this case, our card gives us 1 additional family counter. We have now added a family to the tribe section. We will now use the hunter-gatherer board to see how much food we found to feed our tribe. We then place them in the correct row to see how much food we obtained. We got a total of 5. Nothing from the 1, 1 from the 3, and 4 from the 2 4s, which each give 2 food. We therefore add 5 food to the pack section. Each family must eat 1 food, so we need to remove 4 food. We now have 1 food left. Food cannot be stored. Instead, we remove the extra food and add 1 family for each food removed. But what if we had only 3 food, 1 less than the number of families? If we did not have enough food, we would lose 1 family for each missing food. 2 piety could be used to avoid losing a family, but we only have 1. Since we lack 1 food, 1 family dies.
You can allow students to play as long as you like. 4 or 5 rounds tends to be sufficient. If you want to continue, announce to students that their people have learned to farm and settle down in a village rather than moving around in search of food. Students should set aside but not put away their families and piety as they will continue to the next section. Those should be placed on the new board. Families go in the village farm and the piety in the shrine. Food will go in the granary and dead families will go in the graveyard. Development. Shift to farming settlements. Collect the old event deck from the student and give them a new one. The new deck includes event cards as well as specialist cards. They are placed in the workshop. They eat food but do not farm. They have special effects. For instance, if students have a potter in their workshop, they do not have to remove 4 family counters from the pest infestation event. Some specialist cards provide a bonus if another card has the same positive effect. For instance, both the Weapon Maker and the Bauer and Fletcher cards prevent the same negative effects. Therefore, if you have 2, the second and third provides additional food. The food check remains the same, but to stimulate greater productivity from farming, 6-sided dice are rolled for each family rather than 4-sided. Because of this, you'll need a lot more food, families, and dice for this section. Change in rules. When calculating how many dice are rolled for the food check, only count families, not specialists. Do remind students that specialists can contribute food in certain circumstances. When calculating how much food is needed, it is important to remember to include specialists, so a village of 12 families and 3 specialists would need 15 food. If a family dies, students decide whether it's a farming family or a specialist who dies. After playing a round or 2 in the village farm simulation, give students question cards so that they can ask each other the questions and continue the game at their own pace. Concluding the game. Allow the students to play as long as you think is appropriate. For fun, you can ask students to add up their number of family counters and specialists to come up with their final population and then see who had the most. Perhaps the group with the most should receive some sort of prize. You could consider the following questions for a post-game discussion. Why do you think the simulation shifted from using a D4 to a D6 for food production? How did the event cards impact the simulation? Why might they have been included? Why do you think that the specialist cards were added? How did the specialist cards impact the simulation? What else did you learn about the transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture from the simulation?